Hey, what's up, guys? Let's do another SQL question. So, here we have a question, top travelers, and we have our users table, our rides table, and as you can see in our users table, we have an ID, which is our primary key, and a name that goes with that ID. And here we have our rides table. ID is our primary key, which has unique values per row, and user ID is a foreign key which references our users table. And here we have our distance traveled per ride, and we want to write a solution to report the distance traveled by each user. So we want to return the table ordered by travel distance. So it should be, our travel distance should be in descending order. And if they travel the same distance, then we want to order them by their name in ascending order. And let's look at what this could look like. So here we have a list of users and their rides that they went on. And this is what the output should look like. As you can see, Elvis and Lee have the same distance traveled, so their names are ordered in ascending order. And then everyone else who traveled less is in descending order. And so a way we could do this is we could do a join between our two tables, our users and rides table. So let's draw our two tables here. And so we have our users, our rides, and we don't want to just do an inner join between these two tables, since there could be another person here, Amy, and she didn't travel at all, but she should still show up on this list, right? So, Amy should still show up on this list. And in that case, we would need to do a left join, since we want to get all of our users. And we also want to get the rides that they went on, right? So in this case, we would do a left join, and we would need to do some kind of aggregation, right? So Alice went on one trip here, and Bob went on one trip, as we can see, and Alex went on one trip, and Lee went on 3 different trips, as you can see. So we would need to sum up these values, right? We would need to do some kind of aggregation function. So here we would do, so Alice would get 120, Bob would get 317, Alex would get 222, and then Lee would get 500, 730, or I think my math is wrong. Yeah, 220. So 430 or 450. And we would have Jonathan and so on, I guess, if that makes sense. and so on. So, and then we would want to order these by who traveled the most, right? So what we'd need to do here is we would need to do a left join between our users and rides table, and then we would need to have an aggregation function in our select statement. So we would be selecting, our ID, our name from our users table, and then we would need to do some kind of aggregation function like a sum of distance for all of them, and then we'd also need to group it by the ID of our users table, since we could have another user here, 21, named Alice, so you can't just group it by the name. So this wouldn't work. We would have to use the ID here, and then we would need to do some kind of order by ascending type of situation. So let's get into some coding. So let's start with our select statement. We would do, and based on the question, we only need to return the name and the distance traveled. So we would do users name, and then we would want to do a sum of our distance. We'll do rides.distance. And as I said, with our left join, say we had a user who didn't travel at all, right? That means that we would get a distance of null in some of the columns, right? So in that case, if we do have null, we could do a case statement, like if it's null, then 0. Otherwise, just add the distance. Or we could use a function called coalesce. And in this case, if it's ever null, then we'll just default it to 0. And then we'll rename this column to travel distance. Left join rides on users ID and we want to group it by our ID and order it by our travel distance in descending order, and then if they equal each other, we want to order it by the name in ascending order. Okay, I think we need to do users.name. Here we go. Cool, so it worked. Hopefully you learned something. Thanks for watching.